Aloha! I'm Ed McNeil from Oahu Travel Divers in Honolulu, Hawaii. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you would like notification of future instructor videos for tips and tricks, please hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate that. Scuba instructors are taught to teach new divers to take deep, full breaths using their diaphragm. This is okay advice, but totally does not work for people with large lungs. Better advice is to teach people to breathe naturally and normally. So this video is for divers with large lungs and the instructors who teach them. Over the past 2 months, I've had 2 divers with big lungs come dive with me on a charter. Both had a history of bad air consumption and poor buoyancy control because they were way overweighted. Divers with large lungs often end up being dramatically overweighted during training, and until they find somebody who can help them understand their issues and address them, they will never experience good diving because they'll never experience good buoyancy control and they'll never have good breathing. So let's understand the problem and then discuss a remedy. The main problem of being overweighted is that it reduces our zone of stable neutral buoyancy. Simply put, every pound of extra weight reduces the width of our zone of stable neutral buoyancy. When we're properly weighted on standard scuba in warm water, our zone of stable neutral buoyancy is about plus or minus 15 feet. This means we can go up or down the water column without noticing much difference in our buoyancy control. When we're overweight, our zone of stable neutral buoyancy is reduced. The more overweight we are, the smaller the zone. When overweighted, we have to add extra air to our BCD for the extra weight. This extra air means our BCD is more impacted by changes in depth. Small changes in depth have a bigger impact. So instead of a neutral buoyancy zone of plus or minus 15 feet, maybe we have 5 or 10 feet before we need to make adjustments. If we get way overweighted, we might not have any zone of stable neutral buoyancy left. The result is we will breathe harder, have to add or release air more frequently, and burn through our gas while feeling inadequate and insecure as divers. If you're an instructor, try overweighting yourself and observe what happens to the width of your zone of stable neutral buoyancy. If you dive with 10 pounds regularly, add another 5 to 10 pounds on a weight belt and go diving. If you're an instructor trainer or course director, consider doing this with your candidates so they understand the issue better. The original and follow-on scuba instructors of my divers failed to recognize they had big lungs. It's likely these instructors didn't know how to identify or help divers with big lungs develop good buoyancy skills. This is actually an easy problem to identify and address in confined water. It's also easy to identify and address on a charter, but if you're not looking for it, you might not recognize what you're seeing when you see it. One diver came to me on a charter. He is 6'4" and weighs 265 pounds, a big guy. I had a 3-mil shorty for him to wear. When I asked him how much weight he needed, he told me 40 pounds. 40 pounds! That's what his first instructor told him he needed and what he always got when we went on charters. I refused to give him 40 pounds. I immediately asked him if he had big lungs. You know, like the person who can fill up a party balloon with a single breath. Yep, he was that guy. Now, scuba instructors are taught that the average diver has a tidal volume of around 400 to 500 milliliters. This is true for a 5'7", 155-pound diver with quiet, easy breathing while at rest. This theoretical diver has a tidal volume of about 500 milliliters and an overall lung capacity of about 6 liters. 500 milliliters is about 1.2 pounds of gas. Tidal volume at rest is about 10% of vital capacity, but it can increase to 50% of vital capacity while in exercise. So this theoretical 155-pound diver could have a tidal volume of nearly 2,500 milliliters or 6 pounds of gas if breathing deeply while working hard. Standard scuba buoyancy instruction is designed around a modest resting tidal volume. A fin pivot works well with a small amount of tidal volume, but lung capacity varies a great deal across body types and sizes. Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps is famous for having a lung capacity of 12 liters. 12 liters. That's double the average. Now, tidal volume generally varies along with overall volume, but not always. I'd love to know what his tidal volume is. It wouldn't surprise me if his tidal volume was well over a liter, gently breathing while lying on the sofa. Breathing from the diaphragm increases your tidal volume significantly. We know that taller, broad-shouldered people have larger tidal volumes. Tidal volumes of 800 milliliters at rest are not uncommon. That's 2 pounds of gas. A person with a naturally large tidal volume can change their buoyancy by many pounds while breathing deeply and fully from the diaphragm. The first moment in training where you might identify a diver with big lungs is during a fin pivot. You think the diver is weighted appropriately, but as soon as they take that full, deep lung of air, they pop to the surface. This is the moment to assess their lung capacity and address the real problem. Instead, this is where my two divers were given extra weight and then more extra weight. In one diver's case, it went up to 40 pounds. Finally, he was able to stay down during the fin pivot, but was now so horribly overweighted, he would never experience a decent zone of stable neutral buoyancy until he encountered an instructor who could help him. So you're in the pool with someone you think might have big lungs. Here are 2 ways to check. First, ask them. I had an AOW student with big lungs. He was a nurse. I asked him, and he told me that he regularly checks people's lung function using a spirometer, and then does it himself occasionally, and he knew he had huge lung capacity. The second way is to blow bubbles with them. Stand in a shallow section of the pool. Both of you take full, deep lungs of air. Put your faces in the water and start blowing bubbles. Try to match his or her bubbles. You'll know very quickly if they have big lungs. Those bubbles just keep coming and coming and coming. So now what? Here's what to teach them. Explain to them that our air needs underwater are the same as our air needs above water. Divers with big lung capacity need to get used to breathing naturally and normally while diving. Ask them how hard they are breathing while standing around chatting with you, or how deeply they are breathing at the moment. Tell them not to take full, deep breaths from the diaphragm while diving. Sorry, Patty. Otherwise, they will end up being very overweighted and have a very small or no zone of stable neutral buoyancy. They will burn through their gas, trying desperately to become neutral and never quite getting there. My diver, who was weighted with 40 pounds, needed 20 pounds and a brief lesson on proper breathing. I explained to him what most likely went wrong in his training and what was happening to him. I told him to exhale when he descended and begin breathing naturally, and to find out for himself what a comfortable breath volume for him was while diving. His wife had warned me that he was always the first person out of gas. Not anymore. On his second dive with me, he was better on gas than his wife and was relaxed and trimmed out beautifully. In one charter, he went from doing awkward 25-minute dives to over 45-minute dives, and he's going to rapidly improve as he gets used to better breathing technique. While this video is focused on large lung divers, everything here also applies to smaller divers who are overweighted. They will also have to overbreathe as they deal with a too small zone of stable neutral buoyancy. Getting weighted properly and learning to breathe naturally and normally makes all the difference in diving. Before doing a weight check on a diver, Make sure they're breathing naturally and normally. Now, do a weight check with whatever their normal diving breath is. For large lung divers, this might take a few dives to figure out. Okay, finally, let's talk about a velo. A velo doesn't have an air-filled bladder and does have an amazing range of stable neutral buoyancy. But big lung divers still need to breathe naturally and normally. Someone with a very large tidal volume can easily pull themselves out of a zone of stable neutral buoyancy, even on a velo, if they breathe from their diaphragm. On a velo, it's important, just like standard scuba, to breathe naturally and normally, especially if you have big lungs.